As Aang's powerful transformation unleashes a bright red beam of light that pierces the skies, his demonic form was undergoing a new change. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Aang's latest and most powerful demonic form ever, the quadruple finned form. We turn to a past memory from a few days ago, when the female hunter was still alive. She cheerfully tells Aang that once she sees the city of the breaking dawn, if possible, she wants to become an apprentice gardener. Since she really likes flowers, F in the chat boys, cause we now return to the present where Aang stood before a massive tower of flames. It turns out that he was burning her body, as a part of a warrior's ceremony. He even recalled her telling him that she found their apocalypse far too cruel, which was why she thought that they needed prettier flowers. As numerous similar towers of flames appear throughout the city, Aang vowed to never forgive himself for this mistake of his. As he walks out the city, he knows that all of this happened because he couldn't suppress the demon's energy inside of him, hoping that these flames will spare the warriors' bodies from being ravaged by demons, so that they will no longer suffer. Even though he had gotten the strength of a quadruple finned form, he was no longer in the mood to test out how strong he had become. Plus there were a lot of problems that he had to think about, so he knew that he needed to reorganize his thoughts first. He recalls the octuple finned female demon with that terrifying spacebending ability, which made him wonder what kind of relationship she has with the demon king inside his own body. Seeing as how they forced his body to jump past the triple fin stage right into the quadruple fin stage, Aang could only wonder what those bastard demons were planning for him. He also recalled that the triple fin demon used strange equipment to help it break through to the quadruple fin strange, making him feel uneasy about it. Seeing that it wasn't something that demons made, Aang wonders how they obtained it, or rather, who was the one that provided it to them. Seeing that it was an equipment of that high caliber, which was only something that can be made by the highest ranked city, Aang knew that it must come from the city of Breaking Dawn. Either way, Aang needed to find a large town quickly, so that he could let squad leader Joel know that he was safe. Which made him wonder if Lu and the rest of the team were alright. As he rode in his car, with sunglasses on, Aang hoped that they had managed to safely escape the tunnel and had already reached the city. Based on the information he knew, Aang decides to continue in the same direction, so that he could reach an A-rank city called Padia, hoping to report his status back to Helios from there. And so, our boy rides into the wilderness once again, leaving behind a city filled with burning bodies. Meanwhile, the 4 other team members and Jin had safely reached an A-rank city called Brian. A man with a red eye and scar on his other tells the team that unfortunately, they could not send out any of their soldiers to rescue Aang, as they had just received the news that the B-rank city Pethor had just encountered a high-level demonic wave, and had been destroyed. This man is a quintuple-finned core warrior and a battle instructor called Kurt. He even tells them that the Aang was probably dead as well, and that sending the soldiers to rescue him would be irresponsible of them. But Jin wasn't going to accept Kurt's decision that easily. He tells him that Aang had a unique talent, which could provide him the chance to survive the danger. Kurt doesn't change his mind, telling Jin that there was no lack of young and uniquely talented warriors, but as talented as they are all incapable of surviving a highly ranked demonic wave. His reply made Jin silent as he thought about it. Kurt then lets out a sigh, knowing that in this apocalyptic world, no human life should be left behind. So he lets Jin know that even though they couldn't send reinforcements directly, he would be able to send the scouting warriors on their way back to check on that city for any potential survivors. Jin was glad to hear that and thanked Kurt for it, and so Kurt decided to leave as he was busy, but as he left, he mentions that he hopes that the high-ranked demonic wave in Pethor City would affect the demon hunting competition in the city of Breaking Dawn. Jin tells him that he had heard of their demon hunting competition that would be starting soon, but also knew that their C-rank city couldn't participate in it. Kurt hears this and turns around, telling Jin that they could stay here for a few days to understand the only S-rank city, the city of Breaking Dawn, and the demon hunting competition that they were going to hold. He informs them that the criteria for participation for a city is to be at B rank, but knew that the 3 warriors behind him could participate in the future. As a gesture of good faith, he tells everyone to look around the office in the city, to understand more of it, much to their surprise. Jin and Lu's team immediately bowed their heads, thanking Kurt for his kindness as he left the room first. The moment he left, Yuhui approaches Jin, asking him about what the demon hunting competition was all about. He explains to her that it was a competition that only the city of the Breaking Dawn can hold. The idea behind it was to use the hunting of different levels of demons. To select a new warrior representative, the City of the Breaking Dawn will also bestow upon the selected warrior a unique gift. He further tells them that this was an event that is held only on a specific date, and something many warriors have looked forward to. But he noted that it was a pity that in order to participate in the demon hunting competition, the city needs to be a B rank. But he believes that they would have a chance to participate in it. Snow was curious about how Aang was doing, knowing that he would have been extremely interested in the demon hunting competition if he was here. He still couldn't believe that Pethor City had been invaded by a high-ranking demonic wave, and hoped that Aang had managed to survive and wait out the demonic wave. Even Yuhei never thought that their first venture outside the city would be something like this. As Lu gazes out the window, she knew that Aang was only in danger because he wanted to save them. Hearing their words, Jin lets out a deep sigh, before telling everyone that they could only wait for the scout warriors to bring back news for them. He had also borrowed the communication center in this city to inform Helios about their current situation. So for now, they would stay in Bryan temporarily, since it was a rare opportunity for them to come here. He hoped that they could learn from everything that they observe here. Since there were a lot of amazing warriors here, we now turn to a rank city Padia. In the waiting room of the Padia city, two warriors were talking. One of them was able to verify the news that the other had given them, about the fact that B-rank city Pethor had already been destroyed in a demonic wave. She tells him that they helped him send a message to the C-rank city Helios, explaining the current status of his team, confident that they would receive further news of them soon. But as for his other request, the lady with a scar on her eye and a newly lit cigar in her mouth, she tells the warrior that she was sorry that they couldn't give Aang an energy crystal. She explains to him that they were not the ones that decide the energy crystal's rations, as it was decided by the upper rank cities. Check out the babe with nicely toned abs. She is a quintuple finned core warrior, known as Paris. She is Padia City's battle commander. She continues to tell Aang that since the city that was originally in charge of Helios had been completely destroyed, then Aang could relay this to the City of the Breaking Dawn, requesting for a new upper-ranked city to be in charge of their resources. Hearing this bit of information, Aang couldn't believe how troublesome it was to get the energy crystals, but if that was the case, then he thought that maybe he could make his way to the City of Breaking Dawn, to also investigate how that demon had that equipment to break through. But his current identity is a problem for him, since there is no way for him to enter the City of Breaking Dawn with it currently. As he thanked Paris for the information, he asked her if it was possible for him to represent Helios City to go to the City of the Breaking Dawn. As she twists her cigar onto the ashtray, she tells him that it wasn't possible. She informs him that unless he was Helios's current leader, or was able to obtain the authorization to do so from Helios City, then he wouldn't be qualified to do that, as they just can't have any random person be the representative for negotiations. Aang thought about what she said, thinking that if wanted to get the authorization from the city, he would have to go back once more, making it troublesome. But then, Paris tells him of another way. Much to his surprise, she reveals to him that another way to go to the City of the Breaking Dawn was to have an upper-rank city vouch for him. Someone like her would do the trick. Surprise, surprise. As Aang asks if she could vouch for him, Paris agrees but with a request. Aang tells her to reveal it to him as he was curious about it, so she tells him about the demon hunting competition, something that he had probably heard of. She wanted Aang to join her team as an aide, and to help them investigate some information during the competition as a Vanguard member. In exchange, she was willing to vouch for him, but with a cold look in her eyes, she warned him that she couldn't guarantee his safety. It turns out that there are Vanguard members in every team in the demon hunting competition. The purpose of these members is to scout out the levels of the demons and to gather information quickly, similar to that of a scout. But due to the extreme difficulty of the demon hunting competition, and the difference in demon levels, Vanguard members are often the ones embroiled in the most danger, and it's normal for them to die or be heavily injured in the process. They are seen as cannon fodder, and as such, many warriors participating in the competition will all actively avoid taking up this particular role. Seeing that no one from her team was willing to take up this particular role, Aang told her that it was fine and that he would accept her conditions. After all, Aang was the brains behind the demon hunting competition back then. We now turn to see them inside the nanotech equipment storage, brought to you by Tony Stark. Just kidding. Paris tells Aang that making him a Vanguard member was an act of desperation on her part, since the current cities participating in the competition will never choose members to be a part of the Vanguard, because for the past few years, all Vanguard members have all died or been seriously injured. As she warns Aang once again, telling him that she couldn't ensure his survival, but will try her best to satisfy all his demands and to cooperate with him. She then introduces the nano wings that are in their storage, telling Aang to pick whatever he wanted. He understood her intentions and began to look around. As he did, Paris thought about how Aang's core level insignia has been ruined to the point that they couldn't even see what level he currently is, and that his core was that originally without any finned levels in it, plus the fact that he was from C-rank city Helios. She knew that most of the soldiers that they had were a double-finned core warrior rank, but Aang seems to be confident of himself. That's cause he's the main character. Plot armor vibes. Looking at Aang as just a warrior from a C-rank city, Paris wonders if he had some hidden cards up his sleeves. And so, Aang made his choice of the nanotech equipment, which seems to surprise Paris. As he stood in front of a massive sword, he told her that he had chosen the nanotech equipment that can change its form into a large sword. Aang knew that he can move freely with the battle knife he had, but it doesn't do enough damage when used in a fight. Before he takes it, Paris shouts at him to wait, informing Aang that there was a condition to use that nano wing, and that he needed to at least be a triple-finned core warrior in order to use it. She knew that based on his current abilities, forcibly activating it won't just destabilize it, but may end up hurting him. But our boy ain't no bitch. He immediately takes the nano wing, ignoring all of Paris's warnings, and replaces it with the one on his chest. The moment he does, a bright light appears all around him. As Paris shielded her eyes from the light, she continues to look at Aang, thinking about a certain possibility. The light died down as something spins in the air before landing heavily onto the ground. Aang had obtained a new weapon, stating that it was pretty convenient to use as its weight makes it seem really sturdy. Paris couldn't believe that he actually succeeded in activating it, making her wonder if he had a unique understanding of nano wings. She had heard that there were some warriors with a higher talent that can ignore the criteria of various nano wings and use them. Now that she had seen it for herself, Paris found it amazing. Aang then looks at her, wondering if she had a practice battlefield. They soon exited the nano wing room. As they walked together, she tells Aang that she was willing to fulfill his requests but wanted to know why he wants to go the practice battlefield. He tells her that he wanted to try out this new nano wing on some demons as a form of warm-up. Paris was concerned with the fact that Aang wanted to go into the battlefield alone, even though the practice battlefield had already been flagged by them. She warns him that there were still chances that some single-finned demons would appear, so she offers to come with him if he thinks that he couldn't deal with it. Side note, the term flagged is known as utilizing the fog dissipating system to dispel the fog in certain parts of the wilderness outside the city, used to temporarily claim a section of the wilderness outside the city. For scouting, practice battles and experiments. But Aang says that it was fine, since he could handle a single-finned demon. Paris couldn't help but think of Aang as an interesting kid based on his reply. She tells him that pride and bravery are two qualities of a warrior that are rare to come by, reminding Aang to be sure. She even reveals to him that she had a couple of quadruple-finned core warriors to teach, knowing that if they had a fraction of his bravery, then things would be much easier for her. As they parted ways, they told each other that they would see one another later. As he left, Aang couldn't help but smirk, knowing that there was no way that he could let her accompany him. He didn't need to just test his new weapon. What was more important was for him to check what kind of ability he had whilst in his quadruple-finned form. We are now sent to the flagged domain. As Aang took a look around, he could see that all of the fog had dissipated, making it the right place just when a familiar right foot appeared behind him. The tapping sound it made was enough for Aang to hear it, making him think that the demons have already started keeping their eyes upon him. The red demon then lunges right at him with its massive claws, but Aang casually dodges to the side. Summoning his new weapon, he lets out a single slash, enough to cut the red demon in half. Seeing the effect of his attack, Aang was happy with his choice, knowing that he was much more comfortable in using a large sword. As he swung his sword to remove the blood, he could hear even more growling from behind as he turned to see what it was. The answer, an entire horde of red demons. Instead of being afraid, Aang was amazed by this sight, having thought that none of them would come out during the day. He confidently walks towards them, telling the demons that he wanted to familiarize himself with his new weapon, and to go on a demon-killing spree was great, as he had held himself back and suffered way too much after all. With a heavy step strong enough to smash the ground, Aang leaps into the air with his sword raised high. Aang swung his huge sword, the one in his hand not in his pants, cleaving flesh from each demon, their blood splattering around each time he swung his greatsword. Aang's silhouette started to whirl within this blood-filled dance, as though he was someone that was born to kill demons. Without using the four elements of wood, water, fire and metal that he had mastered from the demon's elemental energies, he swung his sword repeatedly, hammering and refining his current body's muscle memory. Amongst the ruins, Aang battled the countless demons. No, perhaps, a more accurate way of describing it would be a one-sided massacre. Within the darkness, only the sound of demons crying out in pain resounded loudly. Aang had no idea how long he had been cutting down demons. He finally stabs the last demon of the demonic wave. As he looks at his tired body, Aang questioned if this was due to the fact that this body was constantly evolving together with the demonic energy in his body. Even though it was much stronger than when he first arrived in this world, it was still far from what he expected from his body. He couldn't believe that he was panting like this after moving a little bit of his body. But as he thought about it, wooden sticks appeared right behind him, coming at a great speed. Aang causally blocks them with ease, but simply placing his sword on his back. As he turns to see where it came from, he sees two one-finned demons, a wood and fire type, had appeared. The wood demon tells its friend that it had sensed that something was wrong. Seeing a human warrior here, they thought of Aang as their food. Aang, on the other hand, was happy to see them, telling the demons that he had waited for them. The demons were confused by his reply, wondering why he wasn't scared of them. But seeing his weird expression, they thought that Aang was actually feeling terrified. As the wooden demon wondered if Aang was the one who killed all the finless demons, the fire demon was impatient. It rushes forward with its flames activated all around it, telling the wooden demon that it wanted to try and fight Aang. As it stretches out its demonic claw, shouting "burn," in a blink of an eye, the red demon was sent flying back to where it came from. Even the wooden demon couldn't react in time, as it could only turn to see that Aang had stabbed its friend in an instant. Aang had used the metal element, knowing that it was the best type against the fire element. As he transforms into his demon mode, Aang felt that it was right to try out his new quadruple-finned form's abilities. The wooden demon had collapsed onto the ground, slowly inching away from Aang. It couldn't believe that he wasn't a human. Aang recalled that the purple core quadruple-finned demon's ability was to control warrior corpses, and since he was the one to consume it. Play the solo leveling music, if there is one, arise, said Aang, as a dark energy surrounds the dead body of the fire demon. It soon stood up, much to the horror and shock of the wooden demon. The red demon snarls at its former friend, siding with Aang this time as it stood behind him. The wooden demon was left trembling in fear, wondering how it was possible for Aang to control the demon's corpse.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.